What really happens when you just disappear? No message, no confrontation, no goodbye. You just walk away. Quietly, fully, and completely. They didn't expect that, did they? See, most people are prepared for noise. An argument, a long explanation, maybe even tears, blame, or begging. But silence? That shakes them. There was a man who spent years in a toxic friendship. He was constantly belittled, ignored, used. One day, he simply stopped replying. No anger, no warning. He just vanished. At first they laughed. Then they wondered. Then came the guilt. Then the regret. Because silence doesn't feel like nothing. It feels like judgment without words. It forces people to face themselves, without distraction, without defense. And that's what they fear most. Their own reflection in your absence. This video is not about ghosting or revenge. It's about the quiet strength of stoic detachment. The unshakable calm of walking away when drama tries to pull you in. When you disappear, not to hurt, but to heal, they will feel it. And what they feel might surprise you. Let's talk about it. In a world obsessed with visibility, attention, and constant reaction, choosing to disappear feels radical. But to the Stoics, it's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's self-mastery. When you walk away quietly, without the need for closure, explanation, or applause, you reclaim something most people lose in emotional chaos. Your peace. Modern society trains us to react. If someone disrespects you, clap back. If they lie about you, expose them. If they hurt you, make sure they know it. But that constant reaction traps you in their emotional game. The Stoics saw this clearly. They knew that real power wasn't in controlling others, but in controlling yourself. So what happens when you simply remove yourself? No texts, no warnings, no parting shots. Just calm detachment. You might think that's the end of the story. But for the people left behind, it's just the beginning. Your silence becomes a mirror. And here's what they see staring back at them. 1. Confusion. At first, they're puzzled. They don't get it. Where did you go? Why didn't you say anything? They expect noise, not stillness. Your silence breaks the script they were prepared to perform. 2. Guilt. Soon, their mind starts replaying everything. Did I go too far? Was I too harsh? They begin to realize that maybe, just maybe, they caused the silence. 3. Shame. Unlike guilt, shame isn't about what they did. It's about who they were. Your disappearance makes them confront the uncomfortable truth of their behavior. They can't blame you when you didn't fight. They're left to sit with themselves. 4. Curiosity. People can't stand unanswered questions. When you vanish, they wonder, are you better off? Are you happier without me? Your silence forces them to imagine a version of you that's thriving, and that haunts them. 5. Fear of losing control. If they were used to manipulating you, your silence is terrifying. They can't pull your strings anymore. No reaction equals no leverage. You've stepped out of the power dynamic, and they hate that. 6. Regret. Regret comes slowly. It creeps in during quiet moments. A song, a photo, a memory, and suddenly, they realize what they had and lost. 7. Anger. This one's tricky. They might lash out even more after you leave. Why? Because your non-reaction exposes their need for control. They're mad not because you hurt them, but because you won't let them hurt you anymore. 8. Reflection. This is where transformation can happen. Not always, but sometimes. Your absence forces a pause. And in that pause, they might finally start looking inward, asking hard questions, growing. 9. Respect. And finally, the one they never expected, respect. They may not say it out loud, But they'll feel it, because walking away with dignity, without noise, without drama, is rare. And it reveals strength they didn't see before. You see, when you disappear, you don't disappear into weakness. You disappear into clarity. You stop wasting your energy trying to explain your value to people who were never really listening. You stop offering your presence as a gift to those who only took it for granted. Instead, you give them what they didn't ask for, but desperately needed, a moment to face themselves. That's why Stoicism teaches us not just when to speak, but when to stay silent. Not just how to stand our ground, but when to walk away completely. Because when you disappear without anger, you leave behind a silence that speaks louder than any argument. And in that silence, they feel everything. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Epictetus. At first glance, this quote might sound harsh. My mind is complicit? But they were the ones who insulted me, lied to me, betrayed me. And yes, that may be true, but Epictetus isn't focused on what they did. He's focused on what you allow. He's reminding us, no one has access to your peace unless you open the door. In Stoic thinking, the insult itself isn't the problem. It's your reaction that gives it life. And that's why disappearing, calmly, without retaliation, is a Stoic superpower. It's the ultimate act of resistance. You don't scream. You don't beg. You don't try to make them see your side. You simply refuse to be provoked. Think about how most people behave when they feel wronged. They text paragraphs. They demand answers. They spiral, trying to be heard, trying to win. But the Stoic sees that as wasted energy. Because every moment spent reacting is a moment they control you. Now imagine the opposite. Someone betrays your trust. They expect rage, confrontation, maybe even revenge. Instead, they get nothing. Not because you don't care, but because you've risen above their level. That's the strength Epictetus speaks of. Emotional self-governance. It's not passivity. It's presence. There's a story of a Roman official who insulted a Stoic philosopher in public, mocked him, tried to humiliate him. The philosopher didn't respond. He simply stood up and left, without saying a word. Later, when someone asked why he didn't defend himself, he replied, "Why argue with someone already at war with himself?" That's Stoicism. You don't need to fight everyone who throws stones. Sometimes, your silence lets them trip over their own aggression. Let's go back to the quote. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about empowering yourself. You don't get to choose how others treat you, but you always get to choose whether their behavior earns a reaction. So how does this apply to disappearing? Simple. When you disappear, you're removing yourself from the game entirely. You're not playing tug-of-war anymore. You're dropping the rope. You're saying, you don't get my words. You don't get my energy. You don't get access to the space I've built inside myself. That space, your inner stillness, is where the Stoic lives. Here's what most people don't realize. When you walk away silently, they have to wrestle with themselves. There's no one left to blame, no one left to argue with, just the echo of their own actions. And maybe that's the only way they'll ever learn, because sometimes your loudest lesson is the one you don't speak. In a culture that screams for attention, choosing silence is rebellion. Choosing disappearance is clarity. Choosing not to react is power. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself, do I want to win this moment, or do I want to win my peace? Because the Stoic doesn't fight to be understood. The Stoic walks alone, in calm certainty, and lets the silence teach what words never could. Application in daily life. 500 words. You don't need to live in ancient Rome to practice Stoicism. In fact, in the chaos of modern life, disappearing gracefully may be more powerful than ever. Why? Because the world today rewards noise, outrage, arguments, constant connection. We're expected to reply fast, explain ourselves, defend everything we do. But what if you chose not to? What if, instead of reacting, you just stepped away? In friendships, you might have a friend who drains you. They take more than they give. They make passive-aggressive jokes. They make you feel like you always need to prove yourself. You've told them how you feel, but nothing changes. Instead of another exhausting conversation, you simply stop texting. Stop chasing. Let silence speak. You're not ghosting. You're letting the imbalance reveal itself. In romantic relationships, maybe you're with someone who plays games. Hot and cold. Push and pull. They hurt you. Then act like it's your fault. You don't need a dramatic breakup. You don't need to beg them to understand. Sometimes, you just leave. Not in anger, but in peace. Because the strongest boundary is your absence. In work environments, toxic boss, petty co-workers, you don't need to wage war. Apply somewhere else. Build your skills. When the time comes, exit without bitterness. Let them feel your value in your absence. You don't need to slam the door. Just close it quietly. On social media, people bait you, attack your beliefs, post vague comments meant for you. The instinct is to respond, to clap back. But a Stoic doesn't chase every insult. You can log off. You can mute, block, disappear. Because your peace is more important than proving a point. Even in family. Yes, even blood can be toxic. Not every family deserves full access to you. You can love someone and still choose space. You can be respectful and still set a boundary. Disappearing isn't about hate. It's about healing. The beauty of Stoicism is that it gives you permission to step away. Without guilt, without drama, without the need to be understood. And when you disappear, here's what really happens. You stop bleeding energy. You stop fighting for crumbs of validation. You return to yourself. People notice. They feel it. They wonder. And often, in the stillness you leave behind, they finally start to hear what your words never could. Disappearing isn't silence. It's a message. And in a loud world, that message echoes louder than ever. So what's the takeaway? You don't have to shout. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to stay in places that drain your soul. Sometimes, your greatest act of strength is quiet departure. Not to punish them, not to make a point, but to honor yourself. Disappearing, when done with clarity, not anger, is the most stoic move you can make. It says, I no longer need this chaos to feel worthy. I no longer need your recognition to feel real. You reclaim your power, not by winning the fight, but by leaving the battlefield. So here's the question I leave you with. Who are you still explaining yourself to? What rooms are you still standing in? Just because you're afraid of what silence might reveal. What would happen if you simply walked away? Think about it. What if your calm, your absence, your detachment became their mirror? Let them feel the weight of your silence. Let them sit with their own echo. You owe no one your presence, especially if it costs you your peace. You are not abandoning them. You are choosing you. And that is the Stoic way. Be still. Be free. Disappear when you must.